Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we're here at the South Park Center and I'm here with the amazing Jenica with her movie Spare Room. Let's take a look at a clip.
It was my fault, that last day.
We gotta go back.
What?
It's an order. I ignored the order.
I'm afraid we're not going to be able to help you. If alone, you were going to appeal your husband's discharge status. If it's honorable, there would be death benefits.
It was denied.
Sorry?
It remains other than honorable.
Highly decorated, gotta say.
Jenica, congratulations on your film, and I'm so happy to see you again at New Filmmakers because you know you just all blew us away yet again with your feature. For those that haven't seen Spare Room, tell us a brief synopsis of the film.
Spare Room is a drama about a woman who is a widow who's taking care of her brother, a young widow who's taking care of her brother with special needs, and she needs to rent a spare room in her house to make ends meet, and she rents it to a veteran who's just arrived into town, a mysterious, gorgeous veteran. And their lives are inexplicably intertwined, and sometimes to some parts to some great consequence. Ultimately, it's about Lil's journey to find what she wants and what's her heart, because her heart is so broken by so many things that have occurred in her life.
I got captivated. I was just lost in these characters and this story. And I think what you've just mentioned now, there's so many layers, like, you know, being affected as a widow, you know, being part of having someone that you love in the military, you know, dealing with someone that's got, you know, she's got a wonderful brother who's, you know, so happens to have special needs and he's an adorable character, and then love, and there's so much entwined in there.
There's a lot of layers. That's because of Laura Greenman-Hine, who wrote it.
Yeah, where was her inspiration for this story?
Well, a lot of people always ask, was her family in the military? In fact, when I read it, I was like, my father was in World War II, so I have reverence, and who wouldn't have reverence for a vet? But so I immediately had great reverence and could see, because I know some of his war buddies, and he was actually a gentle Navyman, and who was drafted in World War II. So when I read this, I was like, well, she had a father in the military, and actually she had no experience with the military, and I think it was just divinely dropped in her brain and out into the computer, because the story there's sprinklings of the veteran experience all the way through. Virginia Madsen plays this Sage bar owner who was in Iraq, and really is sort of the one person that sees him, the vet, who's going through PTSD, and she had come up with a story with a writer named Brian Brewer, who had known somebody like Arrow, the character of Arrow, which is played by Cole Sibus, who has Down syndrome. And they had both thought, well, wouldn't it be great if there was a movie about a sister taking care of a brother who's left to take care of her brother. And what I loved so much about the story was it never talked about him having Down syndrome. Yeah. It just talked about the heavy burden of having, being a caretaker. Yeah. And feeling stuck in a town, and how do you get out, and what I love about Lil's journey is she wasn't totally clear as to whether or not this was a blessing. Yeah. Her brother was a blessing. Yeah. And through the circumstances that she's gone through, we clearly see by the end of the movie that he is a blessing. And so does the audience, because he's just a love bug.
Oh my God, their relationship to see on screen is just beautiful. You know, there's so many moments. I love when she goes up and they hug each other, and there's just so much love there. And if you don't start loving your siblings, you're gonna certainly love them watching this, because you just realize how special they are to each other. Yeah. And listen, I mean, this is to say, firstly, obviously it's great to welcome you back, because Come See Me was also part of New Filmmakers, and you directed this amazing epic film, which was just brilliant. How is it for you being in the director's hot seat, and we'll come into more about it as well, about that, and then also having this insanely brilliant, perfectly casted cast as well.
Oh.
How was that experience for you?
Well, to be in the director's seat, I had shared about this a little bit last night. Should I share about the story of my child?
If you'd only if you'd like to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm a mom of 3. I had created this film, Come See Me. I'd written it with my friend Doc Pedroli, and we won Best Screenplay 3 times, and I shot it while pregnant, and I talked my gynecologist into giving birth on camera, and that was my baby. I finished that film. What was next for me? I raised my children, and my 3rd child was born, and she had bacterial meningitis. And we had to go into the hospital, and it was one of the most devastating times of my life. And I had this experience of I didn't know how I was going to get out.
Yeah.
I just, whether it's believing in God or not, I'm not a deeply religious person.
Yeah.
But you have to find God.
Yeah.
And I had to deal with insurance companies, the hospital, etc. And the moment, so she made it through. My sweet baby made it through after 3 spinal taps and 21 days of intravenous medication. And the day I got out of the hospital with her, my producer from Come See Me sent me this script. And
The day after, and you're like all emotion and everything.
yeah, and so when I read it, even though it had nothing to do with my daughter, and I'm primarily a funny person, can't you tell by the hat? No.
And the interviews, I love it.
Right. And so, see, primary colors. When I read it, I just immediately envisioned the world. I had just experienced that needing to care for someone and the pull of all the human emotions that come with that. And so it just spoke to me. And I said, I have to do this. And luckily, Laura and I saw eye to eye. The writer and producer who brought the financing, and we had so much fun making this. I asked Mary Vernew, my other producer who produced Come See Me, to read it and cast it, and I said, I have no idea who's 24 years old and has this depth to play Lil. And she gave me Skylar Samuels. And Skylar's father was in the military. She completely related to the film, and honestly, she kills it.
I love it because I remember seeing Scream Queens, and she's moved into this, and she's brilliant. She was fantastic.
And she's currently on The Gifted on Fox,
Yeah,
which I'm sure she's fantastic and in that. But this is an opportunity to really show her chops.
Oh, that's what was so nice. It really was a movie because you followed through her heart, through her story, through the things, the challenges, and what she was going through, what she'd experienced with her, as a widow as well.
And also Martin Sensmeyer, who plays the lead, who plays the veteran who comes into town. I think what was so great and what makes Mary Vernew so brilliant at casting was she read the story. I read the story. I pictured a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, 24-year-old guy. She pictured Martin Sensmeyer because 70% of the military is Latino or Native American. And she knew that, she just said, he's the guy. You just got to meet with him. He's the guy. His father is a veteran. He has the depth. He's the guy.
Well, I once I watched this film, I was like, I didn't, because I do a thing where I watch your film, but I don't want to know who casted it, because I'm like, I want to be spellbinded. But it was no surprise that you, as obviously being your friend, you have one of the most iconic casting directors of all time working on your project. How does that feel? Like, like you're directing this incredible piece, and you just literally have a person that finds the best stars for your film. And
I really
beautiful,
share,
isn't it?
Mary and I share, Come See Me was a very personal film for myself, which was my mother in character. I was in Come See Me, and my mother had dementia, and she had that experience with her father. So that film for us together was a common bond, and we tried to raise money for the Alzheimer's Association. Similar with that, when she read the script, it's like, what is the cause? Well, Mary's very interested in veterans and helping veterans, and she always does a food drive for the veterans, and so we had that in common. So it's funny, I guess I take for granted her casting ability. I more am excited that I have her as a producer, because she really creates a space where I get to create, and she has amazing taste. So not just in casting, but you know, she came to all the locations and she would walk in and go, oh yeah, I see this, like this house that I talk them into, and this place. She lets me do my little thing where I go everywhere, and then James, our producer, James Portalacci, comes in and drops the hammer and makes it work. How do you make it work?
Let's talk about you, because you honestly inspire me so much, and I think one thing that's so wonderful is that, you know, you're this brilliantly talented director and you've created this incredible project, and, you know, you've had to go through lots of many things, you know, in your own life. And I think some people will look at this and watch you and think, my goodness, how does she do it? And she must be invincible. And yet you've had to go through so many different things yourself with your, you know, with your child and everything. I think that's so commendable. And, you know, one thing you mentioned last night is, you know, creative arts, it saves us, you know, it gives us an essence of who we are, and kind of gives us the presence to kind of keep moving along. Because when you're directing, it's such an incredible experience, isn't it? Because you've got an incredible team of cast and crew, and they're all part of the journey that make it happen, and they keep you going as well, you know, which is amazing. There were so many moments in which you directed that I was just, it was just, you just took us right in it, you know, like right there. And I love the, you know, exchanges between, obviously this new roommate and suddenly a change in her, you know, as a widow, and things, how she started the film to where she ended, and how this one person had influenced her. Now, obviously, you've come from an area where you've directed, so you've starred in so many things on camera, and you obviously usually, I see you in funny roles, and I'm always used to that, and this one was such a different take. What was it like for you to direct these incredible actors, and what kind of techniques were you doing, and was there any challenges that you had?
Oh my God, it was like putting on the most comfortable pair of sweatpants.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God,
like,
I love that.
It was like I was just like in my element. I mean, I just had so much fun with that material, with those actors. You know, there were plenty of challenges. We shot the film in 10 days for $300,000.
10 days, a feature film in 10 days for $300K.
And we came in under budget when it was over. Thank you, James Portalacci.
Thank you, James.
And we made all our days. I really share the film with my DP, Alan Cadillo, we had seen a film called 3 Times, which is a Chinese film, and we both were riveted. The camera had stayed, and it was like a voyeur thing, like it just very slowly moved to the action that was happening, and you really were drawn into the performances. And I was so grateful that we saw that film right before we got together to do our shot list, because prior to that, I had sort of seen the film Documentarian. Yeah. And a lot like Come See Me, which, you know, is like 2 cameras following everybody. And
we did that. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but when we saw this film, I went, no, we're voyeurs. We're always on the outside. Lil's boxed in by these 3 men in her life. The one who's deceased in Afghanistan, who was her husband. The one that's in her life currently, that played by Thomas Cockrell, to magnificence. And then, you know, this vet that comes in, and then her brother. And so we always chose to shoot around them, to the side, and, you know, it was always like Lil's point of view. And that was just, it was like eating butter and bread. Like he and I would just hold each other at the monitor, like, this is so beautiful, it's so beautiful, let's move on. We only had like two takes per scene. That was the challenge. And then, of course, working with an actor with special needs. And the thing about Cole is the best way to shoot Cole is to have Cole be Cole. So to have him do the material that was on the page was a little bit harder, because, you know, he wanted to do it so right. And I didn't want him to have that experience on camera. I wanted him to feel comfortable. Yeah. And the actors on the set made him feel comfortable. He FaceTimes with Skylar every single day. That is her true brother. Thomas Cockrell and him had a love affair. If I showed you the stills from the film, it's him and Thomas sleeping in arm in arm. And how could you not love Cole? I mean, he's just such a superstar.
He's not only you just not only found one of the greatest rising stars, but, you know, he's just got the heart to go with it as well, and it's beautiful. Yeah. There was going back to your shots, like, there was just moments where I loved the relationship between the son and the father, and the way you shot it was just so intimate. I felt like I was there with them, and that exchange that they had. And then when, you know, the way that Lil, I almost felt like, you know, you were sort of pointing the camera with her emotion, how she saw him and how she saw her boyfriend and how she felt. And it was so beautiful. And I thought, I'm just the way you said about what you said with your DP and how you watched that film before, I thought that was
Well, it's
that was
funny, we
stunning,
drew, like,
you know?
we knew this house, so we drew, like, we're going to shoot this from outside the window.
Yeah.
We're going to shoot this in the car from outside the window.
Yeah.
And then we'd look at our little drawings, we'd go back to our drawings, we'd be like, okay, and we were so prepared. It was like we could get this stuff in
Yeah.
2 days. The hardest part was, you know, money.
Yeah,
It's
which
just
you
money.
still, I mean, amazingly pulled off, you know, fantastically. Now you had to really give us this essence of this small town, you know, location. How was that experience? Because you had a beautiful location. It was pitch perfect. You know?
Our location manager, Kojo, had said, who's like a big location manager, I actually kind of stalked him because he had done End of Watch, which is one of my favorite films that both Mary cast, and I just loved that film. I thought the locations on that were incredible. So when his name came up, I was like, well, would he do this? And we talked, we read the film, and you know, it was written for the Midwest. And I didn't want a Texan vibe because for some...
Oh, I love that though, yeah.
Yeah. So he said, what about this little town, Piru? And it's within the FilmLA jurisdiction. And so we drove out, it's right past Magic Mountain, and I just went, whoa, we could film from this end of the street to that end of the street to that end of the street, and I'd have half of my movie done. And it really gave us what we needed. And that house was so specific. Obviously the spare room. I mean, it was like the film god shined upon us. I see this house, I jumped on the owner because he was outside digging up some grass, and it had a spare room built onto the side of it. And I was like, well, thank you, film
That
gods.
spare room was perfect because the way they had the two doors, it just, it felt like, you know, he was never quite isolated by himself. He was always part of the building. There's always this kind of curiosity of what was going on behind those doors. And I loved that it was almost part of the house kind of thing, but, you know, right next to the kitchen. It was just really, really cleverly done. I love it. Now, listen, I mean, you know, this is obviously not your first rodeo with us, and it's nice to welcome you back again, but how has it been showing Spare Room to audiences and new filmmakers? How's it been so far for you, for that experience, and now that you've made the film?
Well, we New Filmmakers is our second festival that we're in. So we were in Heartland, which is Middle America, and they loved it. They laughed at all the little laughter parts and the parts that are funny, and they cried at all the parts and it was just awesome to show them. You know, here's the deal. I love to process life through art. If any milestone comes my way that's difficult or brilliant. I remember my father crying at great football runs, you know, either a good life happening or a bad life happening. I then start to see, well, how can I shoot that? How can we make that a story? How can I retell that to people? So in order to have the opportunity to retell something that I've read and envisioned to an audience is always a joy. A gift.
Well, it's a joy to watch. I love the lens that you take us in. You know, it's just really magical and beautiful. I'm almost like, what is Jenica going to do next? Because I'm always excited about what is next for you, Jenica?
I mean, I'm out there having meetings everywhere, and everybody keeps saying they're hiring female directors, and that hasn't happened yet.
No, yet.
So I feel like instead of being poor me, I'm just going to continue to look for good material and create new opportunities. I want to work with the same team again. I want to work with Laura, who wrote Spare Room, again, and I just want to keep. I feel like directing is my calling.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to taking a Poise panty liner commercial as an actress.
I was just gonna say, I was like, but please still keep making us laugh, because you make me laugh so much. Like, I love it. I think you're just very versatile, talented, and you just got a, you know, I mean, I think that's the wonderful thing about you. I mean, your history of work is just like you've done everything and doing everything. I think that's just, you know, what can you do when you're multi-talented, Jenica? That's all I'm going to say. You know, I think one thing that I love about you as well is that aside from being a great filmmaker, you're also really an inspirational person as well. You know, and I think you make people feel humanized. Like, oh wow, like if Jenica can do that, maybe I can do that too. You know, and you have that inspiration. And so even last night, you were giving such wonderful advice to people. What advice have you been given, or advice that you have, do you feel, would you give out to any filmmaker or anybody out there that wanted to go and follow their dreams the same way you did? Do you have anything that sticks out for you?
I would just say don't wait for them. Do it yourself.
Yeah.
There's no them. There's no they.
Yeah.
There's no. My favorite thing that people say in Los Angeles is, well, when I get an agent.
Yeah.
When I get an agent, or I'm looking for an agent. That agent doesn't do anything for you. That agent possibly gets you opportunities, but they can't get you opportunities unless you have a body of work. So make the work. Go do it together.
I'm ready to go on my day now. I'm inspired. I'm going to stroll down the street. No, thank you, Jenica. Thank you so much for Spare Room. It meant a lot to many people, whether you've had a veteran, whether you've been a widow, whether you've just been a human and had experiences in relation, brother and sister. And I think there's so many wonderful layers, and everyone needs to be Spare Room. And we're very excited that you came back to us. And I'm excited to see much more of your work, whether it's making us laugh or taking us to a serious moment. So thank you very much. We love you. Oh, take care. Jenica, everybody.